Good evening, Hex students, and welcome to episode 45 with 2 turns ahead, which we are calling Frosty Treasure. I am Michael Allen, known as Zubrin, basically everywhere, and we are recording on Saturday, January 31st. Tonight we discuss community news, when to attack your opponent's deck, and we draft from a pack of cards. Tonight I am joined by 2 co-hosts. First, returning to us is the delightful, devoted, and dynamic Nicholas Podrasky. Nicholas, if you were one of one race on Intrath, what would you be?
Alright, well, Shinhair have, despite being like one of my thematically favorite races, have desperately short lifestyles, so where they might be awesome to play in a D&D campaign, which is a question I think you've asked me in the past.
Indeed.
I think orcs are so savage. Human have like, I don't know, like we have more development of humans than anything, but I think human is kind of a cop-out, boring answer.
Indeed.
So I'm gonna go with dwarf.
And not all Shinhair have short lives. As long as you avoid being assassinated, concubines can have a very long, fruitful life.
I mean, that's true. That's true.
Second, G Prime, known to his enemies as Will Gabriel, joins us to discuss what it's like to be one of the 2 hexers who went 4-0 with the Jank Feast stack.
Pretty great.
Will. Oh, well, then we don't need you anymore. Will, what race would you be?
I mean, Nick already kind of touched on how this feels like the boring cop-out answer. And I hate playing humans in MMOs just because they feel boring and I'm not experiencing anything new being a human. But in Hex, I would be a human. My flair on Reddit is a sapphire, and that's no mistake. I love the kind of tricky sort of pseudo-control tempo style of card games. I like annoying my opponents. That just feeds me. So specifically a
Venom
human of Cerulean, I would say.
Venom could work.
Are you sure you wouldn't be a well-dressed pirate?
Ooh.
A buccaneer, if you will?
I mean, yeah, if you're going to be a human and you're not going to be a pirate, I think you're doing it wrong.
All right. Well, we'll agree to disagree on that one.
Or part of the Phoenix Guard. You know, Cerulea's got all the cool humans.
Yeah, they do.
Just before you go any farther, how many people have flair on Reddit that you think was actually an accident?
I think people just like pick by random for the most part. Ruby's cool. I don't think people usually put a whole lot of thought into it, and I probably put more thought into my Reddit flair than most people do.
I picked Sapphire because I'm a control player, and then I found out that Sapphire was not the color of control for set 1, but I'm still Sapphire. By the way, my race, I would be an Infernal that worked for the Void Society, so yes, your pick is boring.
There we go.
Yeah. I'd be a dwarf because I wanted to blow up things and make giant robots. Like, that seems pretty cool.
There's no female dwarves, though.
I mean, that's okay. Why would...
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, no, I see. Mike's one of those guys. Well, you guys have it here. The Irish don't exist. Fun is disallowed. Tournaments on Valentine's Day. And now women have to be part of a race. All right, then.
I'm confused by most of the statements, but okay.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on. So our first topic tonight is community news, and this is a huge topic because there's a lot going on within the last week. So before we get to some of the new announcements by HexTCG proper, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening at 5 Shards. First of all, as many of you know, the Ruby Cup is happening on February 14th through the 15th, and we've gotten several signups for it so far, but the prize pool for the Ruby Cup has been increased by the sponsor, which is Rise of the Dead Prince, and the number of packs is... Well, actually, I did not do a new count, but it's something like 250 set 2 packs, 150 or so set 1 packs. There are primals coming out everywhere, random cards going out, and a lot of door prizes as well. And door prizes are not just happening after round 2, but they're happening after round 4 and round 6 as well. G Prime, have you signed up for the tournament yet?
I haven't yet, and only because when I sign up, if I don't submit my deck immediately, I'm going to forget to do it, and I will be disqualified first round. So I'm not going to sign up until I have my deck ready, and I've chosen what I'm going to play.
Okay, I imagine there's a lot of people like you who are waiting to sign up until they either are sure about their plans or they want to make sure they have the entire package ready.
Yeah, but I'll definitely play. No doubt about it.
Penta, what will you be doing for the Ruby Cup?
I can only imagine that I'll be shoutcasting for another solid 10 hours. Which will be pretty fun. I think we have some exciting stuff lined up for that, actually, just on that particular note. I know JJ wants to come back. We've had a couple of people reach out to us to also help join the shoutcasting team. which is pretty exciting, and hopefully we can get a couple of them on board.
Will you be featuring a kiss cam to honor the holidays?
I mean, I feel like that might be disfaithful to my significant other, so no.
Not of you, of the players. You know, like
they just like going around. No, like, okay, so kiss cams are like an interesting thing in theory, but like, there are so many instances of those things on the internet where like it zooms in and one person or the other on the kiss cam, like there's like multiple things that happen. Like they zoom in on people who they think are a couple,
and it's like that's my sister.
Yeah, not only is it not only like, oh, that's just my friend, you know, or like the camera zoomed in on a man and a woman or two women or whatever, you know, like whatever they're trying to find for the kiss cam, and it turns out that the people that they came to the event with are on either side of them, so they both have to like awkwardly turn around and be half off the camera. Or like more recently, I even saw one where like the guy didn't look up from his phone to realize that he was on the kiss cam, so his date for the event just turned and kissed some random guy next to him, and I was just like, oh my god. It's just like so sad. I wouldn't want that to be as part of the Ruby Cup. Oh my goodness.
I'm glad you're focusing on the terribleness of sport arena kiss cams as opposed to the impracticality of doing it in an online game when no one's in the same room as each other.
You could figure it out.
I mean, I've just figured Technophy would be able to rig something up for us because he's been pretty awesome at things so far.
We'll ship out those things where you can feel what someone's doing on the other line, and they will, yeah. No.
What? No?
This is getting weird.
This is strange. You know, for the people listening, I actually almost had a recording of Mike saying that he was going to play something in Hex because it was fun, but then he refused to repeat it. It was sad days.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I know, yeah. That should give you a clue that he knows what I'm talking about. Anyway, Ruby Cup.
But if I said I knew what you were talking about, that would also... I don't think it works that way. So yeah, the Ruby Cup. And as part of my pitch on the forums, because we have a forum post on the main forums, the general chat, which is fantastic, as opposed to being relegated to the fan site place. So we're getting a little bit more exposure than we have in the past. My pitch was that if you haven't found a Valentine's Day gift yet, bring home your loved one the Ruby Cup itself, because there's no better gift.
I think at that point, if you don't have a gift lined up, you're in trouble.
Well, you're also playing in the Ruby Cup, so
you might be in trouble to begin with.
Maybe. Or you could be in a healthy relationship where you negotiate some type of time. You know, you don't have to spend the entire evening playing in it.
Yeah.
Second thing, Crone has been working diligently with the data release that Data Dragon's been providing automatically, and the website hexprice.com, which of course is affiliated with 5 Shards, is automatically updated with data from the data dump that we get from the auction house, so you can see the swings of both highs and lows of cards from day to day as we get the data, as well as how often the cards are being traded. And the newest feature he just added within the last day, I believe, is one where it tracks the relative gold to plat conversion rate based on card trades. And so he has 2 metrics on there right now. One is the overall average of gold to plat based on how much cards are worth in plat and how much cards are worth in gold, and that's hovering between 80 and 100 gold per 1 plat. But then also just looking at legendaries, it's over 200 gold per plat, and so the actual value is somewhere in between.
Yeah, and I think there's one kind of crucial piece that's missing here, and that's the trade price ratio for packs themselves, but they don't give us that data right now, so there's really nothing that we can do about that. You would kind of have to go into the auction house on a regular basis yourself and check it out. But that's not part of their regular data dumps.
Well, this is part of the reason. So originally he just had the average for all the cards, and it was coming out at 100 gold per plat, and this seemed a little bit odd to me because I do track the pack conversion ratio, and it runs about 180 to 200 gold per plat, and it's like, that seems really low. And so we talked about it, and it seemed pretty clear that the big reason for this, why it's so low for the average of cards, is because there's a price floor for the rares. And so you will sell a rare for 30 platinum, and you will always get 31 platinum for it, minus the auction house cut. And the gold doesn't have that same floor, and so you'll be selling it for far less than its value of gold, which makes it look like the relative value of gold to plat is way less than it actually is. Yep. And so that's part of the reason why I include legendaries, because that floor is not quite the same. There's no legendary that hits the bottom for its floor yet. And so you have a more accurate representation, but it's kind of skewed as well because it's lower volume in trade of gold, and how much people want the gold for their legendaries probably skews it upwards, and so that's above 200. But like you said, I prefer the pack as the metric because it is the higher volume and consistent data, or it's just more consistent in terms of trade in both gold and plat.
Yeah, and people are constantly trading packs. Like some cards will probably not see any trades at all throughout the course of a day, but packs are moving at a constant rate because people are always drafting.
Third on our list is that we now have a YouTube channel. This is something that Technophy has been working on because he wants to put up a lot of videos that we have from the tournaments that we have, and so the 5 Shards YouTube channel has lots of the highlights, including a particular member of the 5 Shards team playing 4 heroic outlaws to win a round that was deemed amazing by the shotcasting team, including Pinta. And we'll have a lot of other various videos. In fact, one of the things that Technofeed told us he was going to do today, begrudgingly, because I said I was not going to do it, is to start uploading the podcast to YouTube as well. So if people prefer listening to the podcast to YouTube, they can do that. So we have the YouTubes.
We have
Pinta.
the YouTubes.
Do you want to take us through the big announcements coming from Hex?
Oh yeah, this is kind of really cool because a lot of people have been pretty upset with the Friday updates as of late, just because the Friday updates have generally been not as full of content as things as we expected in the past, mostly because, like I said, over the last couple of days, the Hex staff basically went on vacation through traditional holidays in December and January, which kind of makes sense. And then when they came back, they just didn't have a whole lot to show us because they hadn't been working for so long. Now, a lot of people seem to expect content all the time, so when they didn't get it, they were a little antsy. And a couple of days ago, it'll actually be almost a week ago now by the time you hear this, there was a forum thread up on the main HexTCG channel discussing arena spoilers and just stuff that people had seen in the Hex raid and stuff like that. Stuff that they were able to discuss because obviously the NDA was in effect, and everyone at the Hex raid was just giggling at us because they had a ton of information we didn't. And in the middle of that thread, Corey Jones posts, "Very soon," just all ominously, to which later Fantio came along. I believe it was Fantio came along and said, we'll just watch it for the Friday update. Friday update comes out, and turns out there's going to be a couple of really cool things happening next week. So by the time you hear this, it's not next week. It is either tomorrow. This is coming out on Tuesday, right, Mike?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's coming out tomorrow. Yes, assuming we're not late. And if we are late, then it should actually be happening right now. So go and look. If this is Wednesday, go look. We are getting access to a special open arena testing and PvP tournament server. And this is a glorified stress test, but it's actually a stress test on a separate server that has a couple of extra things accessible to it. And this is awesome for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you don't want to participate in the stress test for whatever reason, you don't actually have to deal with the issues that the stress test brings up. Furthermore than that, we are getting access to the Frost Ring Arena, which, in case you didn't know, the Frost Ring Arena is one of the first pieces of PvE content. It is the first piece of PvE content that we are actually going to be able to play in the game. It is the first look at and access to a way to play Hex without actually worrying about paying for packs or cards. You'll be able to win gold, PvE cards and equipment, and play the game for free. And this is kind of a big deal. Of course, before that comes out, we have nothing of those likes. So to kind of mediate between this, starting on Thursday, February 5th, and to Saturday, this server will be open, and you'll be able to go on there and test the Frost Ring to your heart's content so long as the servers remain stable. In addition, on the Wednesday prior, Corey Jones is going to start a stream at 12 p.m. Pacific, PST, and he is going to show off a couple of cards, probably going to play a deck or two against the arena. And then when he's done, it's still really... it's still like really weird for me to talk about this because just the way it was worded in the email. I'm pretty sure it's still okay for us to talk about this because I talked about it on the main HexTCG channel the other day. And it's in the Friday update. The 7 streamers who are part of the daily streaming on HexTCG's main channel, Cyrus, Infamous Neo, Mythic Fishmom, Function Fails, and Mokog, along with Function, Alucard, and Hexed Havoc, as well as myself, will be taking 3-hour blocks and streaming our own set. We'll be on the test server going over cards, playing decks against the tournament, against the arena, having a good time, which is really cool. So you'll be able to watch us play with this stuff leading up to keeping the hype ready up to the Thursday release. Further than that, once you're on the arena test server, if you don't actually feel like dealing with the Frost Ring Arena, maybe there's problems, maybe you just want a chance to win something, you can enter a free tournament that happens on the 7th at 12 noon Pacific. It's a sealed tournament. Your cards won't carry over. It's free to enter. But if you win, the prizes that you win will carry over to your main account. And I believe all participants will receive 1 free constructed queue entry ticket. So it's worth it just to enter, which is awesome. To get onto this arena test server, I mean, your account will already be mirrored over. All you have to do is have had an account on Hex already, which is really awesome. So I look forward to seeing people on the Wednesday stream, and I look forward to seeing everyone on the test servers the day following, because we're going to get to play in the arena. That's super cool. There are a couple of things you should know ahead of time. The UI update isn't in there, and the AI still needs to be polished. It's not necessarily the updated AI that they intend to release with the actual Frost Ring Arena. This is more of a stress test than anything, but you should know that that's there. You will get all of the stuff on your main account mirrored over. In addition, you should be getting 20,000 platinum to spend on packs, so you can just buy a bunch of packs, maybe trade people for cards that they don't need if you need to. And then you're also going to have a few PvE goodies to play with, according to the Friday update. I happen to know what my PvE goodies are going to be, but I'm not sure if they're the same thing that everyone else's are going to be, so I won't spoil that in case I'm wrong, and then I look like a dinkus.
So, G Prime, are you setting aside time for the Frost Ring?
It's kind of coming at a bad time. I go back to work the following day, 12-hour day shifts, so I do have the one day that it's supposed to release, and hopefully it comes out early enough in the day that I do have enough time to spend a good chunk of time. I'm not going to be there for the tournament, but that's kind of fine because it's a tournament. I can play those anytime I want. It's the PvE arena that I'm really excited about this weekend.
Okay. And, Penta, do you know what deck you're going to be using in the arena trials without seeing, of course, Corey Jones' stream yet? If you had to pick a deck, what would you be playing?
Well, okay, so this is going into a little bit more a detail about the email that we got from Cryptozoic, and when I say we, I mean the streamers that are going to be streaming here. We've been asked kindly, or suggested to play different decks each, which, I mean, anybody with half of a knowledge of how these things works makes sense. It wouldn't make sense for all 7 of us to just run the same deck back to back to back to back to back. But I don't actually know how much time we're going to get to look at the cards beforehand. And it was suggested that we might be looking at the cards just, hey, look, here we are. Let's build a deck together with the viewers. Which is a really cool idea all on its own. But it's hard to say because I don't know. There's one time slot before mine. I will be streaming between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. And Alucard, I believe, I don't want to make any promises here, will be streaming from 2 to 5. So depending on what Alucard puts into his deck and what Corey uses in his deck, if he plays one, I'll try to mix it up. I would like to do something Shinhair related, but we haven't seen very many exciting Shinhair PvE cards yet. But I might do it anyway.
Manika Shin is playable.
Yeah, Manika Shin that we saw in the Friday update is definitely playable. Like, there's definitely playable cards, and we should have equipment to play with as well.
Do you know if the PvE cards that Kickstarters are going to be awarded are going to be included in this test?
I have no idea. Even if I did know that, I wouldn't be able to tell you.
I suppose you would.
Yeah, it really just comes down to what is available as far as what we're given, because it's not every PvE card, obviously, that's going to be there. Mm-hmm. I'm sure all the ones that have been spoiled will be on there. I'm sure there will actually be lots of them, but that should be pretty exciting.
I actually don't remember the Hex Kickstarter stuff. Was that just alternate arts PvE, or were they cards unique?
The PvP rewards were all alternate art, but because they didn't want to give anyone anything exclusive that people couldn't get otherwise for PvP, because it's supposed to be competitive. But all the PvE stuff is, if you kickstarted, you get these, and only you get these. When it comes to the PvE champions or the PvE cards, those are exclusive to the people who helped support them before Hex was actually a thing.
Yeah, there are things like
Orson Stream, Spectral Assassin. I pulled it out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say there was a card with a big old blue bear on it, which I believe is Orson Stream. Which is, I think, has been... I'm not sure if that's the same card we're going to be getting, but it follows in with the wild / fairy / dream theme we've been seeing very recently, where wild does a lot of stuff to turn troops into random troops. Mm-hmm. I mean, I might just try to make something as random as possible. That would be kind of cool.
Since they're exclusive, I would expect them not to have the Kickstarter stuff with this trial.
Yeah, I don't imagine that's going to be there. But at the same time, those feel like some of the first cards that they would work on, doesn't it?
Probably.
Like, because they want to be able to say, all right, here's PvE, and also here's all the stuff that we promised you in the Kickstarter.
Your first deck is going to be Jovial Pipit, Orson's Dream, Parallel Evolution. We saw that card last week. The one that evolves is like Birthday or something. I forget what it's called. Celebration, maybe? Holiday, there you go.
Yeah, that one does kind of remind me of Orson's Dream, or at least the original design of Orson's Dream.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because, like, from what I've been picking up on, this doesn't have anything to do with the email or whatever. They're working on the set 1 stuff as far as PvE goes first. So I don't think there's going to be equipment for the set 2 cards yet. So, well, and I mean, this might not be true. This might just be me talking out of my face. But if there's I want to play with as much equipment stuff as possible. Yeah. Maybe take something that already exists and make it crazy.
Well, yeah, because that's part of what really differentiates the PvE experience from the PvP experience. Is there's so much more customization, because they don't have to be scared about OP combinations and cards completely dominating the metagame.
Yeah, like one of the other things, like just on the basic note of it, I like playing with Replicator's Gambit as it is, and I'll never forget one of the pieces of equipment for it, the legendary piece of equipment, made Replicator's Gambit read that when a troop was shuffled into your deck with the Replicator's Gambit effect, 3 other cards with the same name in your deck also gain the power. So all 4 copies of, say, whatever in your deck get that power to come into play and create 6 copies, which fundamentally changes Replicator's Gambit from being generally a low to mid playable card, if that, depending on what you're playing it in, to something that's actually just legitimately like, oh, this can make my deck crazy sometimes.
Oh yeah, and if you have like a Peak or an Oakhenge Ceremony or something, and you can actually search, and it's 4 cards in 40 in your deck that you need to grab that from, it's huge.
Yeah, and then what if and then this is where the PvE starts to go crazy. You have 6 pieces of equipment, and the idea of these 6 pieces of equipment is that they take up specific slots, and I'm pretty sure the Replicator's Gambit one looked like a weapon of some sort. Mm-hmm. So then what if Oakhenge Ceremony has, you start thinking, okay, what goes good with Replicator's Gambit? So then you find something that says, like, Oakhenge Ceremony says, when you draw a troop this way, draw another troop of the same name out of your deck for free. Mm-hmm. So you get 2 of the replicated cards if you hit one with Oakhenge Ceremony, so forth and so forth.
As long as those pieces of equipment don't fit in the same slot.
Exactly. And if they fit in the same slot, then you have to wonder, do things work the other way around? Is there a card with 2 pieces of PvE equipment good enough to use them both? Mm-hmm. Because what if... I I have the HexTCG rewards page up right now, and I'm looking at Victoria. Victoria's got 2 pieces of equipment. One lets you pay 3 less to play King Gabriel, first of all, which seems crazy, but also allows you to discard another card named Princess Victoria to get +3/+3 on Invincible for this turn on the Princess Victoria that you already have on the board. Are those both worth playing? Do you want to make your deck based around Princess Victoria's power all on its own, or do you want to keep going down?
Yeah.
It's a very cool system. I cannot wait to play with it. That's a day away for those of you listening. It is still 4 days away for me, and I'm just like, nah, now, please.
And I'm sure that what we see next week, or I guess this week, or tomorrow, or whatever, the stuff that we see is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the amount of customization we're going to have. And I'm really genuinely excited for this, for the next era of Hex.
Yeah, I think, like, just to wrap things up, because I did bring this all up with people being mildly disappointed with the original set of Friday updates. This one in particular still has a couple of people upset because now they think that we're getting a test server and that farther down the arena is farther away than possible, and we're only going to get to play it for 3 days and stuff like that. And well, that's a perfectly acceptable thing to look at. I'm going to play on the other side of the field and say it's awesome that we're getting a stress test. It's awesome that we're getting a stress test that's not on the main server, because that's actually kind of important to the people who like to maintain stability on the main servers, and so that Cryptozoic doesn't end up having to give out 1,000 tickets because we did the tournament servers again. And the more information they gather, the quicker that they can get out to this. So even if you don't really have the most vested interest in it, it would still be really cool for you to get on and play the Frost Ring Arena for a little bit. Try to get a couple of friends together, play it all at once. Try to break stuff. I think that's the best thing we can do as a community. Try to break stuff and let them know what you broke. Because and if the servers break while you're on, we've done our job. We get closer and closer and closer to this end goal, which is Hex being Hex.
Knowing that we have a test server and a stress test this week, how far in the future do you think the full PvE Arena release is?
I'm still erring on late February. I think I might have said early February a long time ago. I think this does kind of signal that we're getting closer to late February.
Yeah.
At the very worst, I think we will have access to this test server a couple of times if it is far away.
Right. As they slowly improve things.
Which does kind of do its job of giving us something to do in the meantime. Yeah. I cannot imagine that it's farther away than March, which a lot of people on the forums seem to be speculating at right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a fair thing to look at. Yeah,
I mentioned this on last time I was on the podcast, but I've got my own little personal calculation for whenever Cryptozoic announces a general window. I have numbers that I run on it, and I give my own prediction of where I think things are going to release. So when they said that we were getting Shattered Destiny in, I believe, November, and then we were getting PvE in December, I said, okay, PvE is probably going to be February. And I was sticking with that up until yesterday when this update came out. Now I think that since they admit that AI is not quite ready and that they need a little more work done on it, it feels like that might be another month down the road. I'd be glad to get it in February, but at least we're getting a taste of it now, and it helps the impatient side of me keep at bay a little bit.
Okay. That seems relatively fair. By the way, the legendary equipment is a weapon, though that's from several minutes ago. I was just more astonished by the rare equipment, which makes the Replicator's Gambit quick, which makes that card very playable.
Oh, yeah.
Because
it definitely
block a troop that would die anyways.
Yeah, I remembered that, but I also... Well, I don't necessarily think that that's bad. I just liked the idea of I think both of them are playable. I actually considered going back to that as, when I was talking about, is there a card with 2 pieces of equipment that are actually good enough? I did realize that Replicator's Gambit is, in fact, if you have both of those pieces of equipment, if even if it was just a quick action, Replicator's Gambit would be a lot better than it is right now.
Right. So. It's not a sexy piece of equipment, but it makes a card so much better just by changing that one word from basic to quick.
Yeah, and just for anyone wondering, you would be able to block with a troop and then use Replicator's Gambit to remove your blocking troop, gain the effect of it, draw a card, and take no damage from the troop unless it had Crush.
And that just in itself,
respond to
play a
removal.
card to nullify a block or an attack and draw a card, that's worth the cost by itself.
Or nullify removal.
Sure.
Yeah.
To some degree. I mean, the card still takes spray, but you can draw a card and everything else.
I will come back stronger than before.
Well, no, I'm going to go home and get my buddies, basically.
Will, I believe you have the next topic.
Yeah, sure. So as part of that news post, they also showed the next two pieces of alternate art. The next two cards that they're going to be giving to the people who...
There's two cards?
There's two cards.
No.
I will tell you what they are if you're patient. So they said that they want to give the people who backed the Kickstarter at the collector level 6 alternate art cards per year, 2 copies of each, of course. And our last 2 for the first year cycle, which I believe starts in March, are Chaos Key and Cerulean Mirror Knight. And these are both super playable cards, or at least Cerulean Mirror Knight is way, way, way playable. I mean, of course, it's a top tier card at the moment. Chaos Key isn't quite as potent as it was in Mono Set 1. There's a lot more void effects available now to most. I believe the only shard that doesn't have a void effect at like a 5 or 6 cost action is Wild. No, I guess Ruby doesn't either. But we've got Dishonorable Death, we've got Immortal Decree, we've got Murmurs from the Void.
No. Zakir can avoid stuff.
Zakir, yeah. It's kind of in a roundabout
You're going
way.
Down on Hexprity, Will.
In a roundabout way, sure. But yeah, I think Chaos Key is still playable because it's an artifact you can put out for 2. It can't be countered once it's on the board, so you can put it down for 2. Your opponent's already past the point where they could have used counter magic by the time you pay the 5 to actually to pop it, to use its effect. So they're both good cards. People kind of complained about the last couple of alternate arts that they weren't as staple as they want alternate art cards to be. Now, these are huge. Cerulean Mirror Knight is going to be probably the most expensive card in Hex, aside from potentially alternate art Ozawa, that was a very limited release during the first Gen Con that Hex was at. So, obviously, with the release of these 2 new cards, there's going to be a little bit of an effect of the on the marketplace of the old versions of the cards. So Cerulean Mirror Knight has dropped in value a little bit because people are dumping it, expecting to be using 4 of this new one in their decks in the future. But I think people are going to have a harder time getting 4 of this new Cerulean Mirror Knight than they think. I predict a cost of about $80 for one of these new alternate arts. It's a sick looking card. Living Totem is worth $50, and it looks just as sick, but it's not quite as popular of a card as Cerulean Mirror Knight. So yeah, Chaos Key is probably going to be...
price hasn't been affected that much lately. It was up to $6 within the last week, especially after the VIP list came out. But right now it's around $4.75, $5, which is about what it is when there are competitive tournaments going on. But once they go live, you'll see some people dumping their cards. I mean, if I had access to the collector's edition, I would still keep my normal copies because I like having 4 of every card.
Yeah, no, I mean, the type of person...
Not everyone's me.
The type of person that would get the collector's tier that wants to have all of the art is going to want the original versions too. So they're not necessarily going to get rid of them, but they might want to dump extra versions because people don't necessarily need those copies to fill out their decks quite yet and can get them on their own time.
So you think they're going to go for about $80 a piece?
I think there's kind of a psychological barrier at that $50, $60, and people don't want to pay $200 or more for a playset of cards, but this card is going to be so sought after that I think it's going to burst past that a little bit. I've heard some people saying they expect them to be worth $100 each, but I can't imagine someone paying $400 for a playset of cards in Hex. Not yet.
I mean, there's going to be around 3,300 of them. A little bit more once people redeem a few more of their collector tiers and other higher tier codes. And 3,300 is a decent size for the current population base. Filtgate, there's only about 1/3 relative to that. There's about 1,400. So 1/3 to half.
What's going to make it valuable is that people are not going to want to sell it because it's so sick looking and it's so playable.
I mean, Fieldgate, because it's not overly playable, it has its spot, but they're trending at about $30 right now. And then but like Zentoth Inquisitor, there's fewer of those, and they're still going for pennies on, well, not pennies, they're going for about $15 to $18 right now, which is insane. But $80 seems like, wow, that's a lot of money.
I honestly think that when we get the next set of gems with the next block, Zentos Inquisitor is going to have more options, and people are going to really gravitate back towards that card, and I think that'll bring up the value of that AA a little bit.
Yeah, well, we also did see a bunch of people dumping the normal card when Zentoth Inquisitor was being produced, and Zentoth Inquisitor has gone down as low as $1.25, $1.50, 150 platinum for people who don't do this in dollars, and that has kind of come back and rebounded because it's still a very playable card. Yep. But, I mean, the price of the Zentoth Inquisitor AA is definitely going to go up over time just because it's one of the more rare AAs. Ozawa, there's going to be more of those in the future. And same with the Jovial Pippets as well.
Yeah, there's so much potential, and of course this has been talked about the Zentos Inquisitor ever since it was shown first, but there's so much potential with a card that can be replayed with a major gem in it, because there's just so many things you could potentially do, and they got to be really careful when they design the next sets of gems to make sure that it doesn't totally break the game to allow you to replay it over and over again like you can with Zentos Inquisitor.
Well, there are 2 gems that they nerfed at one point because Zentoth Inquisitor, made them really powerful, which that was a long time ago, and this was before we were formally in Set 1. This was back in Alpha, but it was just Zentoth Inquisitor seems to be a very powerful card. The art on Chaos Key is pretty nice. It took me a while to actually look at because I was so distracted by the Cerulean Mirror Knight and a shield pointed at me, making me think that maybe I'm one in the Croc and the shield, but...
Yeah, I still can't see the Chaos Key. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
2 blinding of the light from the Mirror Knight.
As somebody who's just... I love Cerulean Mirror Knight. I'm so sad I'm not going to get those cards.
Cards like this make me wish that we had artist credits on the cards, and maybe that'll be part of the double back.
They're coming.
Yeah,
you know, they are. It's
back.
been confirmed 100 times that that's coming, but it's also the last time we heard about double backs, it was on Corey's interview on Cyrus's birthday stream, I believe. And they mentioned how that's just something like after the arena comes out, and then after they've made sure that that's okay, they're going to look at things past that. Like, the double backs are still a ways off, which makes me really, really sad because the art in Hex, as I've talked about 100 bajillion times, is really, really, really awesome, and I would like to see artist credits. I actually, at this point, I think I'm finally at the spot in my head where I would be okay with a compromise and having artist credits on the card without being part of the double back somewhere. There's not really a whole lot of room for it, but maybe if it was just in the card manager, you could see that information somewhere. That would be nice.
Or when you zoom in.
And as much as there's cool stuff related to the double back, like the achievements and unlocking full version of the cards, it's not a critical component of the game, and if something does need to wait for other things to be developed,
yeah,
that's something that makes sense to push back.
No, I wasn't saying that I mean, because obviously it's a pretty low priority for most people,
but of course we all want everything now, and it would be great if we could have everything now, but we just sometimes gotta be patient.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if it's a matter in this case, of my head going I want everything. I think it's more which is fair. I think it's more I really think that we could benefit from seeing those things at this point, but no.
So there's a couple other things in terms of community news to kind of wrap up this section. Brynhilder, after winning a code on the Hex Raid stream where he won one of every card from Set 1, is holding a competition called the Trials of Intrath. Will, do you know much about this? Can you tell us about it?
I skimmed the post, not because I was uninterested, but because I just didn't really have a whole lot of time to read it when it first came out. But it seems like a really cool thing for Brynhilde to put on. What he's basically doing is making a list of sort of community challenges, almost stuff that seems like scavenger hunt kind of stuff, or just like cool things to achieve within Hex, or solve puzzles by building certain types of decks. And he's giving prizes for people who can solve these and provide proof that they've done so. So it's pretty much that he's given a list of cards or packs or whatever that he will award for certain challenges. I believe you have to do the bronze one first, then the silver, then the gold. And there's quite a lot of stuff that you can earn if you manage to complete all these challenges. It's a pretty wicked thing to put on, if you ask me.
Yeah, it actually looks really cool and a lot of fun for people who have time to be able to do it.
I don't think you have to do...
Yeah, he has specified that you have to do them in order, because someone actually solved a gold trial, and he clarified in a reply that...
Okay. I just didn't see that when I was skimming it, much like Will. Yeah. I just don't have the... Also, like, most of the stuff he's giving away, while it is very cool, is stuff that I feel other people would do better with, because it is not.
Yeah, and I hope...
stuff I already mostly
I hope that the people who want Hex as a free-to-play game take notice of this, because this is a great opportunity for them to start building on their Hex experience and having fun with the game without having to put too much into it money-wise.
Yep. Other things coming up, the day before this episode comes out, we're having another episode of Hexperty where both Pentachills and G Prime are going to be contestants. Yo. There'll be a throwdown between 2 turns of hit and 5 shards. Administrative people? 5 shards people, I guess. And that means when I post this podcast, I'll make sure there's a link to the video on demand, so anyone who's still interested in it can see it. I'll be hosting. It'll be on NeoStream on the Hex main channel, and that should be a fun time, especially given all the questions I've written so far for it. It'll be especially challenging.
Yeah, with Nick as the returning champion, I'm a little bit intimidated. I gotta be honest.
I don't have... I've been getting really lucky, so sure. Like, somebody's gonna beat me, and it's...
Nick,
the first category is stuff on G Prime's desk, so we'll see how it goes.
The webcam I set up last week is going to work out in my favor.
And also, he's told everyone he has a standing desk, so that'll be an easy one. That'll be the hard point one. And then the HexTCG tournament, the next part of their open series, they have moved it to February 28th after they realized, after Cryptozoic announced that the testing will be happening on the 7th, which was the same day as their tournament. They initially moved it to the 21st, but that conflicts with the VIP tournament. And so the HexTCG tournament will be on February 28th and maybe March 1st if it spills over. I know that they initially planned to have it as a 2-day tournament, but did not do it the last tournament. So we'll see if that's a 2-day or 1-day soon.
I think typically what they say is that they want to do the top 8 the same day as the pool play, but if people can't schedule it that evening, that they'll move it on to the next to the Sunday.
It's kind of up in the air because they also weren't providing official coverage for the top 8 last time, and it was more people, whoever was streaming, people would just go and watch that. So I think they may have their own limited time as how much they can do on a single day.
I do hope they find a way to do coverage, because that's really cool to see. And to be able to highlight and talk about things as they're going on. Sometimes, like, the people aren't streaming, and at least you can watch someone talk about the decks that are being played or the matchups that are happening while you wait for the answer of who wins.
It's terrible when well-known good community members decide that they don't want to stream their top 8 performances.
Yep. Yeah, I very literally went onto the podcast the day before the HexTCG Open, told everyone to stream for our tournament, and then didn't stream their tournament because I was feeling like ass. So, there you go. I was feeling terrible and pretty much crying in pain the whole time. That's why I didn't stream.
And you can consider that a formal apology.
Topic 2.
No, I'm not sorry. No, I did not. Do not put words in my mouth, Mr. G Prime.
Topic 2, they released the VIP constructed deck list for the January VIP tournaments. We spent a lot of time last week talking with Deck Many Things as well as Pentachills.
Wait, Mike.
What?
Somebody on the main... A couple of people have specifically mentioned that they had a request for this stream. I think we might have broke it earlier, but let's try to avoid it for the future. do not mention the card that we talked about a bajillion times last week. The Ruby
Do not
one.
mention the card?
Yep. You feel free to talk about everything else. Yeah, don't talk about the Ruby action, the 4-cost Ruby action. Don't do it.
I'm sure that can be arranged.
Yep, just work around it.
Right.
I believe in you.
But Crown of Primals is a constant.
Let's go on.
That
Let's
is a 5-cost card.
Oh, so... Anyways...
Yeah. Also,
we spend a lot of time talking about the Jank Feast deck. There's lots of different names it can go by. Salt Shaker is one that's been preferred internally by the team testing it. There's some other names. Salt Shaker, because people get very salty when it seems like your random deck is making you get lucky.
Somebody suggests that it be called Deck of Many Things.
I suggested that today.
That Matt didn't build the deck, but he did end up playing it, and it does kind of suit what the deck is. I mean, it's a 150 card deck, so of course it's full of a whole bunch of junk.
Is there anything you want to say about the deck specific to your own experience, because you went 4-0 with it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what really makes the Jankbot deck, the Ruby Sapphire Jankbot deck, work is tunneling as a keyword. Like, if tunneling didn't exist in set 2, it'd be much harder to play such a slow deck with so much, I guess, inconsistency is probably what you could call it, but just unpredictability is probably a better way to put it. The fact that there is a troop that you can put underground and your opponent can't see what it is, that punishes you for not acting, and I, of course, I'm referring to Reese, the Crust Crawler, and then there's another one that your opponent doesn't know what it is that punishes you for acting, and that is Fissuresmith. That paralyzes your opponents, and that puts them in a really tough situation. Do I attack? Do I possibly get 2-for-1 by a Fissuresmith? Do I possibly let my opponent build that Reese? Delaying them lets you do whatever you need to do with your deck, and in Ruby and Sapphire there's a lot of cool things that you can do that'll help you win the game. And I think that's really what makes that Ruby Sapphire Jankbot deck work, and that's why I believe I was able to 4-0 with it, and not just because I'm super lucky, because I don't generally think that I am.
So in terms of the distribution of decks, there's a couple of other interesting things going on. There was one wild diamond deck that ran City of Adamath. I think I have that card. Citadel of Adamath. And just as kind of a finisher, it looks like a very interesting deck design. And after the VIP deck list went out, the auction house price for the Citadel went from $2 a piece to about $3 and some change.
Which is,
so I have not tried it yet.
It's really strange to me that's like, because I bought 4 back when they were like 30.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird to me that card has gone up to $2 over the long set of time, because like I definitely purchased some for almost the floor price.
Yeah. Well, I would expect you to be particularly impressed with that card because of the Cosmic Transmogrifier deck that you loved so much in set 1. Because Citadel of Adamath creates a very large number of things to feed that Transmogrifier.
Yeah, I have a Sapphire Diamond Cosmic Transmog deck that I sometimes play in the Proving Grounds that has Citadel in it. Yeah, I bought it, maybe not day 1, but it was the first legendary I had 4 of.
There you go.
Because it's pretty fun.
Cyrus ran twice to a 4-0 victory, a Ruby Diamond deck that Jesm Jedi apparently gave him from the Hex Raid. That's anti-Gorefeast tech of sorts, and so that might be interesting to look at. Are there any other decks worth mentioning here? I mean,
there was a Mono Diamond, I think.
Yes, there was.
Which I don't know if it's worth mentioning.
Sure it is.
But it is cool that a Mono Diamond deck made it. People were still mad about the card that shall not be named. I mean, it's still there. I don't think that's the card. Yeah, Cerulean Mirror Knight is really what you're looking for in that deck to be mad at, guys. If you don't know the deck I'm talking about, you should have been listening to the previous podcast, because we talked about it a lot. There was
I'm not going to avoid saying Gorefeast. That's a silly game.
Why do you hate fun?
It's just a card.
There was not
Voldemort.
the multiple people who asked to not talk about it this week. I'm sorry, but Mike is the king of hating the community, and he doesn't want 5-star ratings.
And I assure you, we're making Michael put a primal pack in the swear jar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mono Ruby deck.
The Ruby Cup prize pool just went up. There were... What was it? There was
something else that was really crazy.
There's a mono ruby dwarf deck that runs
a-
Hex Geode. That's very interesting.
Wasn't there a Wild Diamond Ozawa deck in there?
I think that might
that's
be the
one.
same
That's
one.
the one that had Citadel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the fun stuff's been talked about. It's worth at least mildly mentioning that some of the decks had combinations. I think had combinations of things that have been banned in all community tournaments, specifically because of their interactions and bugs. And while I don't think the people who included them were trying to cheat the game in any way, there's definitely no reason not to run those card combinations so long as Cryptozoic doesn't feel the need to A, fix the card bug interaction because we haven't had a patch in a while, or B, find a way to specifically ban cards from entering a tournament yet, because both of those are things that I feel we could benefit from. A patch would have been great by now.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've been working on the test server, as is evident, so that's still okay. But this is like my only bit of salt is like I just don't understand why with 4+ community tournaments now that have had to ban specific card interactions, that Cryptozoic hasn't at least given us a way to ban them in these tournaments to avoid those things happening. Because especially when you think about the VIP tournament, which people had to put some money into ahead of time, find specific time to be involved with, and even if you lose due to a bug and put in a ticket, you won't be compensated in time to play another VIP. Getting rocked by a bug is something that makes me really salty. So,
and along those lines, I really do hope that by the time we're building or submitting our decks for the Ruby Cup, that there is a patch to at least fix the Fissuresmith Inspire bug, because I would love to see if Ruby Sapphire Jankbot is capable of going 8 rounds in a competitive tournament.
Yeah, and just to farther in on that, I'm not being salty about Cryptozoic, because everyone knows I'm like the first one that'll defend what's been going on behind the scenes for the most part. It's just it's the one particular thing that gets on my goat. So it's sad to look at those VIP constructed deck lists and see cards that shouldn't be allowed into a tournament right now, or card interactions. It's grinds my gears.
So the other deck worth mentioning is that a Bloodwild Pack deck did make a 4-0, but only one of them.
Yeah, I thought I said there was a 2-pack deck.
You might have.
Yeah,
maybe.
You wouldn't have registered that as being a wild pack deck, though.
Now, what did they
Probably
leverage
not.
from set 2 that wasn't available when Pack Control was first a thing?
Excellent question. So Crackling Rot, Dishonorable Death are main deck inclusions. Obviously, the Shard of the Ancients. And that's it, main deck. Sideboard, we have reserves. Rise Again, one of those. And the Ambusher, 2 Ambushers. And that's about it. So but basically plays the same.
I'm kind of surprised in that Wrathwood Colossus in specific, because I know that in the internal conversations that our group has been having, they feel that another wild card more fits that win condition a little bit better than Wrathwood Colossus does, and is a little bit cheaper, a little bit more versatile. But I guess we'll see if that's competitive and whether that'll
What
work
card?
out. Arborian Rootfather, so that's a 7 cost instead of a 9, 2 wild threshold instead of 3, and it has 2 sockets, 1 major and 1 minor. So it certainly could replace that Wrathwood Colossus. It doesn't have Crush, doesn't have Steadfast, but it has a couple of cool keywords. And yeah, I mean, I think that might be a little bit more steady of a win condition than that 9 cost Wrathwood.
The lack of Crush is kind of huge for me, because you want to be able to get through decks that have lots of troops, like the Gore Knights
Sure,
deck.
but you could also put the Blood Gem that gives -1/-1 to defenders, and they'd have a really hard time blocking it with multiple troops. And an 8/8, you're going to have to.
But just a
They'd
bunch
have
of
a really
Shinra.
hard time blocking it anyway. Like, with the -1/-1 gem doesn't really make a huge difference in a huge troop already, because I mean, it really just stops them from blocking with 2 4/4s,
Sure.
for example, right? Like, okay, so now 2 4/4s isn't enough. I need 3 4 higher troop, so forth and so forth. It gets kind of like if they're able to present a blocker against your Arborean Rootfather by the time you put an Arborean Rootfather down, things don't look very strong as it is. But you do have Spell Shield on it, which is kind of relevant.
But we're not talking about blockers that are going to kill the Rootfather. We're talking about blockers that just delay the game.
You're not getting the damage over is the big deal. Like
the Gore Knight deck would just block with a Falcon or something, that will until they play Gorefeast.
That's true.
If there was a Crush Gem, easy peasy.
Sure.
Like in my opinion, I think that would have been.
Looking at
health
some
is
of the
kind
other
of a big deal
cards
too.
In the set, would a Crush Gem be balanced?
I mean, how bad is a Crush Gem compared to a Spell Shield Gem?
Yeah, well,
your Protector Defender would be so much better.
Yeah, Protector Defender would be wicked. Anything's got a high front end that could be inspired by Lionel would suddenly deal like a large amount of damage to your opponent. They can't really do much about it. So
yeah, I mean, but I mean, Boulder Toss and a Spell Shield troop, really the same argument there.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, the question, something that we've been talking on Mumble with various people arguing about the topic, is whether or not, with the presence of 2-2-1 draft, is mill or burying your opponent's deck a viable strategy in draft. So let's start with G Prime, since he's sleep deprived at the moment.
Thanks.
And so that may allow him to make the right answer to the question. When do you start looking to build a mill deck in a draft?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a little bit easier to build a mill deck in draft than it was with Mono Set 1. More for the fact that there's more things to do, that there's more win conditions based on putting cards in your opponent's graveyard that aren't necessarily making them draw out completely. So stuff like, Typhoon Galleon becomes stronger and stronger the more cards that you can mill out for your opponent. Agent of Mole, which I drafted this morning, actually is wicked if you pair it with something that throws a lot of cards away fast, and if your opponent just can't kill it on repeated attacks. So I think it's a lot more doable now. When I typically decide to do it is if one of those cards, or also Dementia Daisies, or also Murmurs of the Void, manages to make it the whole way around the table. So usually pick 9 or so is when I decide to go mill, unless I've seen multiple Dementia Daisies. And like if I get 2 Dementia Daisies before that happens, then I'm probably going to go mill anyway.
Penta?
Alright, so in set 2-2-1, berry decks are far more viable than they used to be in set 1. I will said that, and it holds true. They're not quite as strong as they are in triple set 2. In triple set 2, I saw a lot of berry decks, I played a lot of berry decks, and I think that they're very, very strong. Now, what to specifically look for really comes down to the daisies and the murmurs, again, like Will said. And here's the real problem with the deck, and it has to do with the size of set 2. You cannot guarantee that 3 or 4 daisies will be opened. You then furthermore cannot guarantee that you will be the only one to get them. There are a lot of instances where if you took every daisy that came around the table, you would end up with 3 or 4 of them. And I actually truly believe that once you reach 3 to 4 daisies, you can just build a defensive deck and have a viable berry deck based on that. It is such a powerful card in its ability to just give you options to remove cards from your opponent's deck. I actually almost won with one on the main HexTCG stream yesterday, despite it being very subpar. Only had 3 daisies, despite the fact that I started with Ogth, the Great Spawn.
And as I mentioned this morning, that I did do a draft this morning, and I got 2 Dementia Daisies in my first 3 or 4 picks, and then didn't get a single one for the rest of the draft. And ended up with a pretty solid deck. Of course, Agent of Mole helped that a lot. The fact that I was past 4 Typhoon Galleons sure helped a lot. I didn't end up going 3-0, but I won a few games in that. And the fact that I only had 2 Dementia Daisies didn't necessarily inhibit my ability to win games as much as you might think.
Yeah.
Well, with Agent of Mole, I'm not going to immediately think I'm going to build a deck that gets rid of my opponent's deck. I just
you
I'd probably start building dwarves.
You don't want to necessarily get rid
robots.
of your opponent's deck. You want to fill your opponent's deck with what's that card called? Booby traps as much as you possibly can.
Right.
And I was actually
I understand the combination of trying to mill your opponent's deck, but I still just would rather that'll be another source of damage for me, and I'm going to win with robots.
I find that the source of damage isn't necessarily what you want to get out of that card. I had a game this morning where I was consciously making the decision to throw cards of my opponent's deck into his graveyard before I was attacking with Agent of Mole, because instead of him drawing that card, I wanted to fill his deck with more and more dead draws, because he was at a point where if he drew anything else to put any more pressure on me, I would have been dead. So I kept him drawing nothing and drawing nothing and drawing nothing, and that's what killed him. Not the 4 damage, but just not having any answers and top decking booby trap after booby trap.
I believe Agent of Mole is kind of an outlier in this conversation, because it kind of gains a little bit of strength from the existence of other of burying, like, the reduction in size of your opponent's deck makes it more powerful. It's already a more powerful card in limited than it is in constructed, just because they have a higher chance of drawing a booby trap. And even without the damage, merely saying you draw a card and don't actually get a card for the turn is very powerful.
It's like a preemptive discard, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's other advantages to the booby trap, some of which shouldn't exist. You can't respond to the booby trap dealing damage to you, so even if you had a response that could save you, you die.
They can cause you to skip your main phase.
Yeah.
Because it's currently bugged.
It is currently bugged and allows you to forces you more often than not to skip your first main phase, which only matters, I would say, like 1 in 10 times. But there's actually a lot more now that I think about it, it's more than that, because if you want to play a shard to gain a charge to activate your reactor bot before you swing, nope, can't do that.
If you just want to play your charge power before you swing, can't do that.
Yeah. Can't do
that.
Although,
it could have happened without me
bug.
noticing.
That's not the way it's...
But it didn't happen for me this morning, where my opponent missed that first main.
I played a Twisted Fate yesterday on the main stream, and I had a situation where the first 2 or 3 turns that I played, it did not remove my main phase 1. Twisted Fate has the same bug. This is beside the point, but like just for Will's knowledge, but once it started doing it on the 3rd or 4th turn, it never stopped from that point on. I never got another main one. So I think there's something that triggers it, and then after it started happening, it just happens.
Could be.
And you just kind of deal with it. That being said, it's a bug. It'll get fixed. That's not the way those cards are intended to work.
So I've yet to ever draft a mill deck.
Wow.
A berry deck. I have 151 drafts under my belt at this point, and I just never see it as a viable drafting strategy, given why I've already picked it at some point. And so part of it is, if you see a lot of dementia daisies, you can start going that way. And we talked about this in regards to changing gears last week. If you see your 3rd dementia daisy go by, then maybe you pick up that 3rd one and hope the other 2 table. I understand that could be viable, and hopefully your other drafters don't think the same thing.
But yeah, that's the difficulty with the daisies. Is they're just powerful enough.
Decks that do this are ones that offer a secondary threat of winning the game. So they do damage. They have significant drops that you have to deal with. Mm-hmm. And so the normal instinct to go blood sapphire for your mill deck is not, I don't think, necessarily the best one. Sometimes I've seen really effective sapphire diamond decks because they're able to put out some flyers and also have very large additional bodies for blockers. And you want to put the pressure on multiple fronts, and the more you do that, also it weakens your ability to win by burying your opponent's deck. So, but yeah, I always think I have a better deck available to me based on what I've picked. Yeah.
But when it comes...
And that's even with 2/2/2. I never was tempted to go and pick up the Dimension Daisies.
But if you did at one point, you probably would have had success with it.
Not necessarily. I mean, well, would I have had more success than what I picked in the first place is the real question. Was it the optimal strategy? Was there ever a time where it would have been optimal? And I'm not convinced I can identify a point that said this would have been more winning given the variance I had for that tournament.
Well, yeah, I mean, you did mention you played like over 150 drafts or whatever number you said.
Yep.
A lot of those are going to be Shards of Fate, Mono Shards of Fate drafts, and
Sure.
I feel like Mill was in a place in Mono Shards of Fate where, yes, there were points where you could build a pretty good Mill deck, but it forces you to commit to a specific strategy pretty heavily, and even when there is a good Mill deck in a given card pool, there's probably a better deck of something else.
Well, it's a very rock paper scissors style of deck, right? Like even when you build a very good Shards of Fate Berry deck, you end up in a situation where the guy who plays a turn 2 and a turn 3 Feral Ogre wins. Like, you can't beat it. And that kind of goes down the line where Berry and that's the power that the two more powerful Berry cards offer in set 2. Dementia Daisies gives you an 0-4 blocker, which is actually very, very relevant. And the Murmurs from the Void gives you removal. And it's just something you didn't have access to in a Berry deck reliably before, because, like, I mean, you had access to removal, but you didn't necessarily have access to removal that created a win condition for you as well. 5 cards is really relevant.
You've got a Typhoon Galleon on the board when you do that? Huge.
Yeah, and Typhoon Galleon gives you the alternate win con.
Right.
I agree with Mike, though. The Berry deck definitely you either need to know that you have a consistently stally enough deck to make it there, or you need to have an alternate win condition, and usually that alternate win condition is going to be something similar to Flyers or whatever. A lot of people tend to say, and I definitely mentioned this on the mainstream the other day, that Blood seems to be where Cryptozoic wants the second part of the madness to be, where it wants Berry to be. The Venom seem to have some sort of like Berry-related mechanics in Zarlox and in the Neophyte of never gets picked, so I don't know its name. I think it actually might be the Neophyte of Zarlox. It doesn't matter what it is. It is Neophyte of
Zarlox,
yeah. Okay, so those cards are really cool in theory, but you would most likely rather just be running like a Spearcliff Pegasus, a Skyle Griffin, something like that. Man, like Berry just needed one more card in set 2 to really be there, I think.
Well, I think they tried really hard to make it viable as a drafting strategy.
But not
there was a conscious effort.
No, see, this is the thing. This is the thing. Is like it's actually really, 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 really easy to make it better. Like, if they wanted it to be good, Neophyte of Zarlox could have read discard, like, bury 3 cards off the top of your opponent's deck or something or like 2. That. Or 2. I mean, but what usually happens, and I might be completely off base with this, but what usually happens is developers try to let those things exist without letting them be good, because it is the single most helpless way to die. Because you can heal yourself if your health is going down, like that you can defend your health. You can't defend your deck. And if they were gonna make it, if they wanted to make Berry more powerful in set 2, they would have to offer another option to Cosmic Totem, because Cosmic Totem is an uncommon in pack 3 in your Shards of Fate
you can't
pack,
depend on it.
which is that you cannot depend on. Like, it's not even close to being something that you can care or worry about, because it's so far from being, first of all, playable in any situation but in the matchup against Berry. But you're never going to see it. Like, even when you're playing triple set 1, it's a card that didn't get picked until 15th pick on the regular, and you very rarely see it going around the table because the set is so big.
So why would they make something like that in set 2? To make Berry more powerful?
If they made something like that in set 2, if they made a common that allowed you to defend your own deck, or to become more powerful, like, Necrophage doesn't really do it. Like, Necrophage benefits from you being buried yourself, but it doesn't save you in any way. If you want the environment to be healthy, you can't create a strategy that's strong and kills you without
giving you alternatives to counterplay. And there's a little bit of an argument, I think it's what this is all leading up to, that you can just add more cards to your deck after the fact to counter Bury. And while it does work, and there are situations where that is perfectly fine and viable, you don't always draft 40 playable cards, or
Before
like
we get
35,
there, they've printed additional
cards.
stuff to defend against it. Rise Again and Robotic Rapture are both fantastic, but they're both rares, so that's not going to give you as
Well, see, that's
much
what
of
I'm
an
saying
out.
is...
But
if
they took
were-
a dramatically different step or take on this mechanic in set 2 because they gave you troops that are defendable. They didn't leave it all to actions like Chronic Madness, or they didn't leave it to artifacts that can't defend you. They gave you very healthy bodies that will have board presence and make sure that some attacks are not going through.
Oh, yeah.
And so
like,
they're
they
definitely working to make it more viable than they were in set 1.
Oh, yeah.
For whatever
absolutely.
reason.
But then there's the twin side of the coin, and this is where I think Barry suffers the most, is that, and Chronic Madness I think is the first example of this. I'm going to talk about something that existed in Alpha but doesn't exist now. So I realize it's been upsetting a lot of people in the community lately, but it's actually important to this discussion. Chronic Madness used to hit more cards, and Escalation used to be better. I believe those are both true statements. I might be incorrect about it hitting more cards on its first play.
I don't know if it necessarily did,
But-
but of course, Escalation in its original...
Yeah, Escalation used to be multiplicative, not
Yes.
additive, which was an incredibly important thing. So if you use Chronic Madness... What does Chronic Madness do at base right now? 4 cards?
Yeah.
So it used to go 4 to 12 to 24 or something like
Four-
it used
four,
to
eight,
double.
16,
yeah, you said 4, 8, 16. You used
and
to
then your
double. That's
opponent's
right. Yeah.
basically done.
So the biggest issue with that, and you imagine anyone can realize this real quick, is that you have very different deck sizes in the limited formats and in the constructed formats. So unlike balancing cards just on their power levels that you would base them on in a limited and constructed environment, like, oh, a 3/2 flyer is better in limited than it is in constructed, or so forth and so forth. You actually have to evaluate, does Chronic Madness kill somebody in limited in 2 plays, or does it kill them in 4 plays? Like, how oppressive is this card? And the 20 card difference makes a huge deal here. So balancing those cards between one and the other usually means that they're balanced for the limited format, because you can't let them be balanced. Like, if they're balanced for constructed, that means they're oppressive in limited.
Rarity is one thing that kind of helps for that, but
Yes,
you still can
yeah.
make terrible rare cards. It used to hit 3 cards instead of 4, which is probably why you thought it hit 12 at one point.
Okay.
So you used to go 3, 6,
there we go.
12. But
Yeah.
as a side issue. So the other part, and this is because we're talking about Mumble, is defending against the Berry type deck archetype, and of course the first answer to that is to just kill them quickly. Play your troop play, aggressive deck, and you won't have to worry about it because you will be faster than they can get rid of your deck. But then another strategy, which is highly debatable, is whether or not you should just add cards to your deck. And so I have twice now against this particular type of archetype have changed my deck size from 40 to 60 and had no problems winning against the deck because it bought me more time. In fact, the first time I did this, I won game 2 after I did it. So I lost game 1 to Mill. Game 2 I won, and in game 3 they removed all their cards that buried my deck, and I won game 3 using the buried cards from my deck that I added to it. And so I became the buried deck on accident, but it was fantastic.
I am the berry deck now.
Yes.
Fool.
But then last night I was in a draft. I actually saw 2 Agent of Moles in 2 separate decks, but same strategy.
Yes.
Add 20 new cards to it, so I added 12 more resources and 8 more non-resource cards, and only 2 of them were regrettable inclusions. One was a
Baby Yeti.
Baby Yeti. Yes, we did talk about that. And then the other was the Cavern Guard, and so... But I was playing dwarves anyway, so it was a fine inclusion.
But there's also
No.
no rule that says that you need to increase your deck size to 60 if you need a little bit
No.
more. If you're not that deep into your colors in your pool and you just need to add a little bit more to give yourself a little more survivability against that berry, you could make a 50 card deck. You could make a 45 card deck if you think that that's enough. to pull you out of that.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's
Well, part of it is keeping the ratios neat, and I know the ratio for a 60 card deck a lot better than I do for a 50 or 55 or 58 card deck. But you also get more time by having more shards in there, and you don't want to accidentally flood yourself. And so those regrettable inclusions weren't too regrettable because they ended up in my graveyard from the berry effects.
Yeah, there's times where you can and there's times where you can't do that. I've definitely drafted decks that were really good, but they were really good because I was picking from 3 or 4 different sets of shards. And by the time I settled, I just was like, all right, I have very good value here, very good value here. That's cohesive. Let's run it at my opponent and see what they do. And that's usually going to be a little bit in the situation where you're actually looking at having far less playables. Like you look at your bin and you're like, okay, well, I've got a couple of extra shards that I took. I've got some Cottontail Scouts, a Moon Monk, a rare I took that's not in my shards, but it's worth money, and a Shield Bot. And, you know, maybe I can put the Shield Bot in there because it's an artifact and it can play in anything, but I can't run the other stuff. So maybe you go from 40 to 45 or 40 to 40, like 40, 50 to 50, sorry. But it really comes down, when you start doing that, it starts coming down to another disadvantage that the deck archetype happens to suffer from, which is, in fact, that it is kind of easy to counter. You can't just start a game with 20 extra health, but you can start a game with 20 extra cards. Which is why an alternative win con is usually powerful, because if your opponent adds 20 cards to their deck, your flyers in your berry deck become a lot more consistent all of a sudden. There's a lot of coin tosses up and down. The biggest advantage that I see in a berry deck in general, and maybe this is just a weird way of thinking about it, but I typically think that's the power really stems from their ability to force your opponent to play differently. There's not a whole lot in the game. There's not a whole lot of alternative win cons in Hex that are actually viable. Barry happens to be one of them sometimes, and it's very difficult to play around in. Like, it's like if you're in a constructed tournament, you're going into like the top 16 or something like that, and you come up against a Sliver, the Immortal Spear deck that's been doing well. Whether or not, like, I mean, you know what your opponent is trying to do to you. You know how the deck works. Like, they're trying to play 5 Slivers of the Immortal Spear and blow you up. You still have to play differently now, because maybe you were playing a control deck, and now you have to say, well, do I worry about countering or getting rid of the defender that he just put down, or do I worry about saving this for the next Sliver that he puts down? Or is he at 2 or 3 slivers? Is he holding on to the slivers? Things that you don't normally have to really think about, because the deck you're playing against is usually just targeting your health. And I suppose a Sliver, before anyone gets on a technicality on me here, Sliver of the Immortal Spear is technically targeting your health because it will deal 5,000 damage.
Yeah, you could protect yourself with a Blinding Light, for example, for 1 turn against Sliver of the Immortal Spear.
Yeah, or just have more than 5,000 health. Which,
in that crazy Ozawa deck.
I mean, it's not impossible. That's all I'm saying. I have to wonder if it's actually coded into the game that it deals exactly 5,000 damage, or if it just wins the game for you right now. I've resolved it once, but I didn't watch my opponent's health titles. Total.
I have to assume it does 5,000 damage.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's out there, but has anyone actually gone to the point of getting more than 5,000 health and then surviving?
In Alpha, I'm sure that's been tested, and if it worked then, it works now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I mean, you say you're sure it's been tested.
This should be one of Bryn Hilder's challenges. Get more than 5,000 health and have your opponent use a Sliver against you.
He has a whole lot of really cool challenges up on there. If you haven't checked out that thread, you really should, guys, because, I mean, most of the prizes will be gone by the time you read this, but it's still fun to just look at what he came up with a very impressive list of challenges, and I don't think anyone should ever, at the base level, I don't think anyone should take away from him the fact that he came up with something very cool to give back to the community after winning a prize that most people would have just taken and gone to the auction house giggling over.
Any other thoughts on Bury mechanics, G Prime?
I think I've heard a lot of times when it comes to drafting strategy and the mill deck that people compare it to at least compare Dementia Daisies in specific to set 1 Briar Legions, and when they saw those come around and when they decided to start picking those and go towards that deck.
Yeah.
I think the problem with that comparison is when you decide to build a mill deck, you're making very conscious decisions, like suddenly Cavern Guard means more to you than it would before, and you're going to value...
Maybe.
I tell you, not having to worry about that early aggression really helps in a 1-drop.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I mean, that might not be the type of berry deck you're going for.
But either way, you are committing to an archetype a little bit more when you're picking the mill deck than you are necessarily when you, say, pick Briar Legions. Because even without 4 Briar Legions, if you don't get a single other Briar Legion in your pool, you can still build a pretty sick mono wild deck or wild whatever else. And that doesn't really apply to mill, I don't think. So you got to be really careful when you decide to go to mill.
Well, I guess. I mean, I would put 3 Dementia Daisies in most Sapphire decks that I play in set 2/2/1. I mean, they're scary. Like, the first one is okay. The second one on board means your opponent has to use an answer to them, and generally you can defend against most things. You do get kind of rocked by, like, the early dwarf aggro, and to some extent humans, but humans have a much harder time getting through, in my opinion.
But if you do want to commit to the mill strategy, that is going to inform your other picks in some way.
Yeah, you are heavier into something than you were with Briar Legion. I agree with that.
Well, let's continue this conversation by drafting from a pack. So, our rare is Born to Flame, uncommons, Keeper of the Wounded Petal, Shard of Savagery, Born to Die. Our commons are Molten Sluggard, Cavern Guard, Construction Plans, Heartbot, Light of Hope, Fire Soul Wizard, Ridge Raider, Murmurs from the Void, Arena Regular, Crackling Sprout, Augmented Awakening, and Burrow Bunny. Let's go with G Prime.
I kind of like Born of the Flame in this pack, only because it's a fun way to close out a game, and oftentimes you are going to get enough from it that it's gonna bring you a lot of value if you manage to get to that number of resources. And looking at the rest of this pack, there's probably going to be a decent Ruby card come back around. Molten Slagger doesn't happen to be a very high pick, but it's still a decent card.
Never played it.
Never played it, not once.
Never played it.
You might get Arena Regular potentially, although that's probably going to be something like a 6th pick or something in this pack. But I like the Keeper of the Wounded Petal, I think, a little bit more. And if I'm lucky enough to get that Crackling Sprout to come back, then that's pretty sick. Although I do think that it's unlikely that Crackling Sprout will come all the way around the table again.
So your first pick is going to be the Keeper?
I'd say the Keeper, yeah. And if you don't get that Crackling Sprout, there's a Burrow Bunny there, so you can kind of build around that Shinhare archetype.
So is Born to Flame your second pick,
I'd
then?
say.
Okay. Penta.
I've seen Born of the Flame do work. I've seen Born of the Flame fizzle. And I'm pretty opinionated where I think random cards are cool and fun. I think Cosmic Transmog you can make reasonable. I think Born of the Flame, you're rolling dice. You are statistically more likely on making one Ruby troop to get a bad value for 1 in 7. For a 7 cost action. You are still pretty bad on 2, and when you get to 3, you start getting to the point where you're kind of rolling the dice at getting at least one thing that should be worth your value if it did create 2 other troops. There are a couple of dead hits in there, and at the long and the short of it, it can be a super cool way to end the game. I think I can't ever commit to that as a first, second, third, fourth pick, though. Like, it's something I would take on stream to be like, let's play this and see what happens. I don't think I'd ever pick it first. I mean, I would maybe in a bad pack. Keeper of the Wounded Petal is very good, but it tends to rely on you having a lot of other Shinhare, and since there's no other Shinhare in this pack, it's a little bit weird. There's the Burrow Bunny. I mean, that's fair. Never mind. This pack really, for me, though, Murmurs from the Void is removal, and if I take Murmurs, I can look at early Dementia Daisies, which might be worth it. It is part of... I might be just thinking about that because of the conversation we've been having. It is expensive removal. Arena Regular is fairly decent. Crackling Sprout and Augmented Awakening are both very powerful actions. I'm not sure if they're worth first picking, although I do really, really, really enjoy having a 2-3 Augmented Awakening Blood Diamond Benoshi deck. So I think I'm going to ignore everything I just said, and I think I might take the Construction Plans Hornet Bot. This is a very difficult pack. I like the Construction Plans Hornet Bot for a first pick here because the Dwarves really like having multiple Hornet Bots, and I'm not sure you're ever really likely to get them back, especially if you start passing one. There's no other really heavy Sapphire or Ruby Dwarf pusher here. Like, nobody else is going to be taking from this pack and be trying to go Dwarves. They might take Born of the Flame or Arena Regular for Ruby. They might take the Murmurs, or that's it for Sapphire. But other than that, like, I shouldn't have to worry about anyone else being... Like, the guy to my right or the guy to his right shouldn't be pushing Dwarves unless they opened a rare kind of thing. And I should be able to cut most of the Hornet Bots and Construct Foremans and try to get lucky that way. For a second pick? Yes, for a second pick... again, going over all the other cards, I think I'd still take the Keeper of the Wounded Petal. The Keeper of the Wounded Petal just has like this very tiny chance of blowing a game up. It's kind of like a Queen's Guard in the way you play it as a 1-drop, and you hope to draw more Shinhair. It comes with some pretty severe disadvantages. Your opponent knows you've drawn a Shinhair card if it gains in power, and unless even if you do get heavily flooded with Shinhair, there's chances that either you draw it late and it's a 1/1 and that's kind of bad, or you just get a streak of 3 shards when all you need is 1 Shinhair, and it's like, frustrating.
And your third pick?
Third pick, Murmurs. Augmented Awakening. I think Murmurs is the correct pick. I would take Augmented Awakening because I think forcing Blood Diamond to Benoshi has done so well for me when I have Augmented Awakenings that it is disgusting. So it's not necessarily the correct pick.
My first pick here is easily Born to Flame. The cost calculation on it, even if you get 3 1-drops, you're not overly happy about it. But if you got 3 2-drops, it's a pretty good value because you are paying 1 extra to play 1 card and get 3 cards out of it. It's a type of card advantage on the board. And only about 10% of the Ruby troops that you can get are 1-drops. And so there's a good chance you're going to get 2 drops or higher. At least 2 of them. I mean, we can run the math on as well. And some of the drops you're not happy to see, but there's going to be a chunk of them that you're pretty happy that you picked up with. Even some of the ones that are socketed that you're not thrilled that you got a socketed troop, but Heroic Outlaw, still 4/4. I'm okay with that. Master Theory Crafter, don't get to socket, but you get a dude that makes dudes. That's usually pretty good. There's some that you're less thrilled about, so maybe the Construct Foreman will be great, a 1/1 for 1, or a 1/1 that cost me some portion of 7. But it's a finisher, and it can be a blowout card, or it can just give you more board presence and it otherwise still made it board. The only thing I don't care for is the 3 threshold, but most of the time, unless I'm playing Tri-Shard, I should have 3 Ruby threshold by my 7th resource drop. So I'm happy to pick it up there.
I've got to say that between the 3 of us, now while I agree with a lot of the things that you've said, I'm surprised that Zubrin is the one to pick the random card as his first pick out of this pack.
Well, I mean, he's not wrong. Yeah, he's not wrong about how the cost calculation works out, but at the same time, I feel like there are still 2-drops in 2-drops in Ruby that are not necessarily 2-drops worth of value. Even as a 2-drop, a Maniacal Entrepreneur, for example, feels really bad for me. I can let you guys in on a little secret. A lot of times while we're doing these podcasts, I draft because I have nothing better to do with my time, but devote all of it to Hex. I first picked a Born of the Flame in this particular instance because my pack was trash, so I was really surprised to see it when we finally got to that part of it. I was like, wait, what?
I think
But,
Minotaur Mercenary would be the 2-drop I'd be less happy with. Well, or it could be amazing.
Like, yeah, but I mean, Minotaur
Gem
Mercenary,
Snatchers.
Gem Snatchers. You see, and then this goes down into further stuff. Is like there's like 7 ruby troops with gems,
Yeah.
and they're all really bad without gems socketed in them. Which goes back to something I was talking about with a couple of people the other days, where I think that randomly generated troops should generate random gems of their own shard when they are created. Now, that might be too powerful, I guess.
It seems like you're just playing with the rules a little bit too much if you do something like that. Now, while I agree it would be more interesting to play cards that create socketed troops, I just don't think it can fit into the rules.
So there are 5 ruby cards with sockets in them, and I'd be fine with 4 of them and happy with 3 of them.
I mean, like, you're saying you'd be fine with a Gem Crazed Berserker, and that's because you're getting 2 other troops, and I get that. But as a standalone, a 3-1 for 7, or a 3-1 that creates 2 other troops for, you know, like, at the end of the day, Gem Crazed Berserker is a trash troop without a gem socket.
Think of it this way, though. If you pick a troop, and if Born in the Flame could make all 3 of its procs that same troop, and you'd be happy with it, then I'd say it's fine. I would be happy enough if Born of the Flame made 3 Gem Crazed Berserkers. 3 3-1s for 7? I think that's alright.
Yeah, I don't think I know. I think it's terrible. There's a rare card that creates 4 3-3s for 7. And it does it every time you play it, in fact.
Prophet of Lodogun? That's an easy first pick.
Oh, super easy.
Yeah, no, Prophet of Lodogun's an easy first pick.
Right.
It creates 12 power and defense consistently. Born of the Flame does not. Born of the Flame can create 2 Zakir and kill off your first Zakir.
I would not even be
you
mad.
still get a Zakir and you're super happy. Don't get me wrong, but, like, I just think, like, it... You know, when you're playing Prophet of Lodogun, you know you're getting 3 troops on the ground, 3 3s for 3s for 7. You're not potentially getting 1 flight. Well, there's not much flight in Ruby anyway, so like you're not even thinking about flight when you're creating these. You might get an Ash Harpy, you might get another Ash Harpy. Might get a Royal Falconer, in which case it's a bomb. Like
Rocket Ranger, which may not work out for you.
Rocket
Same with
Ranger's
the
probably
other dude.
a dead drop. Yeah, and a lot of good Ruby troops rely on interaction with other cards to be okay to some extent. Like, and then there's other things to look at. It's like, what by the time you're playing a 7-cost action, is getting an Elite Pyromancer actually okay, because Elite Pyromancer is a great troop, but by the time you get to 7 resources, you're likely looking at being on turn 12, 13, 14, 15 kind of thing. And at that point in the game, is an Elite Pyromancer going to be okay, even if it does automatically inspire 2 bonus troops on the field?
You're not going to get nearly as much value out of it late game.
If I'm fine with a Gem Crazed Berserker, I assure you I'm more than fine with Elite Pyromancer.
Yeah, I'm not speaking from your point of view, because I understand what you're saying, and I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with it. I just think that the potential unreliability is something that's really scary, when I could just take something that is always reliable. And I don't know if it's right or it's wrong. I mean, I like playing Born of the Flame. I'm not going to say I don't like playing it, because it's certainly fun to spin the wheel and see what you get.
I don't know what this fun is that you're talking about.
All right, well, we've argued with Zubrin about his first pick enough. We should probably hear about a second pick at this point.
My second pick is the construction plans, just because I like dwarves, and dwarves work out well for me, and I like to send that signal strong and early, which only leaves me with a third pick to have any discussion about. And
I think we've all not mentioned that the Fire Soul Wizard is in this pack, and the Fire Soul Wizard would have been an okay card to be here. I would like to get 3 Fire Soul Wizards off my Born of the Flame. Yeah, I mean, it's not a good first pick, but it's a good card in the pack. I would like to get 3 Fire Soul Wizards off of Born of the Flame. That'd be cool.
Yeah. I've been turned off from Shinhair recently, though Keeper is one of the cards that would want me to keep in Shinhair, would make me start looking at it. Yeah, I guess right now I'd be okay getting a keeper and trying to roll my luck with Shinhair, but I just haven't been doing well with it.
When you have one of those archetype staples like Keeper of the Wounded Petal first pick, it seems to make it a little bit easier to build a deck than just getting some smaller, less important Shinhair and hoping that you get those later on.
I first picked 3 different drafts, a 3 Bucktooth Roshis. I've not had good luck with Shinhair, even though that's a fantastic card for Shinhair to start with. Well, yeah. Penta saw me play one of those drafts, and it went okay. The match he saw, but I think I ended up losing in finals or something like that.
No, you won the finals with that one.
Did I?
That Fuzzico deck you destroyed with. You didn't have a problem the whole way through.
Maybe he was having fun and is having poor memories because of that.
No. Matt, if you're listening to the podcast, which I'm sure you will be, if you heard the beeps recently, it might have been Poosh. Poosh might have been creating the beeps. Let me know if it was that. He'll know what I was talking about. There's been beeping in the podcast. Maybe it's coming from me? I don't know.
So G Prime, we still need your third pick.
Yeah, you've had all this time, so you should have a snap decision for us.
I think I probably...
Molten Slayer.
Given that Born of the Flame is in this pack, if I didn't know that it was in the pack, I'd probably take Fire Soul Wizard. Maybe even Arena Regular. But no, I think I'm going to go with that, the Augmented Awakening, like Pentachills. There's not a whole lot of Diamond in this pack, and Augmented Awakening is pretty solid, even though I normally wouldn't consider it a first pickable card. There's just not really that much else in this pack, I don't think, that's worth being too excited about.
Okay. Any other concluding thoughts about the podcast before we sign off for the night?
Hey guys, PvE, woo!
G Prime?
Nope.
Excellent. Well then, my name has been and currently remains Michael Allen. You can find me in-game as Zubrin and on Twitch and Twitter as Zubrin_Alpha. Nicholas Podrowski is Pentachills on Twitch, Twitter, and in-game, and Will Gabriel is G Prime in-game and G Prime TV on Twitch. For any updates on streaming when we post a show or other happenings in the Hex community, follow us on Twitter at 2turnsahead or leave a comment on the show's post at 2turnsahead.com, on Reddit, or even email us at 2turnsahead@gmail.com. That is the number 2. And potentially on YouTube. Yes, we have the YouTubes. Yeah. Finally, if you want automatic updates, please subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you feel inclined, give us a positive rating on the iTunes store. Rating the podcast will give other viewers a better chance of discovering the podcast on iTunes and help us grow the Hex community. Thanks for listening.
Stay lucky, guys.
Alright, let's shift gears a little bit and move on to our third topic for the evening, where we'll be talking about... Are you opening a door?